Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our latest AIM2LEARN event, our webinar. It's on techniques to get more from your ERP system. And today we have Scott Coulter, Director at Meaden and Moore, CPA and business consulting firm. Welcome, Scott. Are you on
Thanks,
here?
Tom. Thanks, Tom. Nice to meet you, and nice to meet everyone in the audience.
Yes, so I appreciate you joining us, and I'm going to turn that over to you here in just a couple of minutes. I wanted to just first, for anybody who might be new to the AIM Hire Consortium events or just need a little refresher, I'm going to walk through just a couple of slides, and then we will get right into today's topic. So again, for those of you who may not be as familiar with what is AIM Hire, the AIM Hire Consortium, this was a program that was started where we received grant funding from the Department of Defense, OLDCC, and it was established to help to strengthen and expand the Department of Defense supply chains throughout southwestern Pennsylvania and the whole state of West Virginia. So if you're looking at the map there, you can see the blue and the yellow areas. And so there's been a lot of focus on advanced manufacturing technologies and ways to help companies to be more productive and effective in today's environment and going forward. We have quite a list of partners that kind of cover and expand across both states. My name is Tom Reed. I am with Catalyst Connection, the upper left corner there. And you can see there are a lot of economic and workforce development partners that work within the two states, all listed here. We also pull in two of the technology institutes, America Makes and ARM, which are both located reasonably close to our region to help with those kind of specialized topics. America Makes works with 3D printing, and ARM focuses on automation and robotics. And then we have some of the top universities in our area, Carnegie Mellon, WVU, Pitt, and Robert Morris are all engaged towards these topics. And so everybody has a role, and then we work together towards those common purposes. So if you came to us through the aimhireconsortium.org website, then you already know how to get there. If not, like I said, it's aimhireconsortium.org. Once you get inside, there's a lot of different resources. The one I wanted to point out here is our supplier capabilities database. So we actually have a map. You can go in and you can search for different capabilities, different types of manufacturers or other economic development partners, and then it will show you a location of where all of those resources are, and then you can click on them and reach out and contact directly someone to help you if you're looking for a certain capability. Maybe you're looking for a partner to help you towards a specific product or achievement that you need to work towards. So we've had, we're just coming up almost to year 3, to our completing our 3rd year of this program. And these numbers are still in flux, but recently we kind of pulled together where our impacts have been already with what our clients have come back with. And you can see here, $22.6 million in investment made, $133.7 million in new and retained sales, and 750 jobs created or retained. And so again, this comes when we do technical assistance projects with a company. After it's completed, we ask the company to complete a survey, and they talk about things like what kind of investments and sales and what other impacts may have come out of that. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. We know that we have many more projects that are still in process, and we will be keeping track of this for 3 years after the project. So we expect to see those numbers all to go much higher as we go forward. And then, again, if you're listening to this live, please, I encourage you to go and look at all of our other recorded webinars that we've had in the past. This is our 24th webinar that we've held. So we have 23 others on our website. You can sort and look by topic area, and we have, thought leaders who talk about a specific manufacturing or technology area. And so it's 30 minutes of your time, and you can go through. So I just encourage you to look at that, because it's a really valuable tool, and it doesn't take a lot of your time to find the answers on a specific topic area. So with that, I'm going to turn this back over to Scott, and I'm excited to learn more about the ERP system and ways that a manufacturer can get more benefit from those efforts.
Thank you, Tom. And there's a great background on the programs with AIM2LEARN. So thank you, everyone, for attending today and listening in on this webinar. I'm going to open this up into presenter mode here. And we're just going to start right in. We'll give some intros on who we are, but I think Tom covered that. But I wanted to start right in on just a market survey, or a couple that have been done in recent years, and give you the lay of the land throughout the manufacturing industry nationwide. And that is that just over half of companies feel that they're fairly or very satisfied with their ERP system, leaving close to half that describe themselves as very dissatisfied, fairly dissatisfied, or neutral. And in our minds, neutral is not a ringing endorsement for a manufacturer's largest investment in IT tools. Probably, and perhaps more importantly, over half reported that their ERP initiatives went over budget, beyond their due date from a project management standpoint, and or delivered less than expected benefits. And so today's webinar is going to be about exposing how this happens and how you can avoid becoming one of those that's in the dissatisfied group. I thought I would start with a colorful anecdote from a CEO that really helped us, his vision helped us launch this service offering over 20 years ago. And it came from this perspective. He said, I know if the machines I invested in are being used. I walk out on the shop floor and see them running. I see raw materials stacked up behind them, and I receive machine utilization graphs and charts. He said, but I don't know if the people are using that expletive ERP system that I bought. All I know is that the software vendor, told me it would increase our inventory turns from 2 to 4 or 6, and now they're down to 1. And it was that insight that he gave us that we designed a methodology structured to help companies get better with their ERP system. And why this dissatisfaction? Well, they show up in terms of what we just call gaps between creating or preventing us from getting where we want to be. Gaps come from a number of places and sources. And by the way, because this, if anyone who wants a copy of this presentation, we'll be happy to send it to you. So I won't read through all of these examples, but one of the sources of gaps are when companies' business model or processes change. Maybe a distributor acquires a manufacturing business, and all of a sudden the software doesn't do what they're going to need it to do. Or you're a domestic manufacturer and you expand internationally, and it lacks some of the features that you need as an international manufacturer. Simply put, you end up with, as business and the environment changes, you end up with a square peg in a round hole. Those darn customers also impose some demands that create gaps in your systems, be it electronic commerce, documents, labels, traceability, some sort of industry specifications. Our government, while the government helps manufacturing companies, there are regulatory changes that they or non-governmental agencies impose upon us. And they may be good for the consumer, but they create challenges for systems, such as FDA and GMP compliance. ISO itself has created some challenges for manufacturers and the use of their ERP and business software systems. So certainly regulatory changes. And then our employees themselves, often called users, which is an unfortunate term, but employees create gaps. A common situation that we see in manufacturing companies these days is maybe the system was initially successfully implemented, and its setup and processing rules were known by a small group of power users, but they may retire, they may leave, they may move on to other positions, and the new employees aren't afforded the same opportunity, training, developmental exercises, what have you, and they come in less empowered and less knowledgeable on the system, and as a result, the performance tends to degrade. And when I say performance, I don't mean the speed of processing, I mean the level of utilization of the system. And so these four sources of gaps tend to lead to what we call partial implementations of ERP systems. Often what we see this manifesting in is that companies implement transaction processing akin to what we used to call an accounting system, where yes, we can ship and bill our clients, we can buy things, issue purchase orders and process checks. Maybe we've put in our bills of material and routings. Maybe we have accurate inventories. Maybe we do work orders and collect labor. But that's about as good as we see in the state of the market. If you're doing better than that, you may be able to just turn off your tube and go do something else, because the rest is going to be about those that's all they've achieved. Many have not done what we call frosting the cake. Using quoting and estimating, or a product configurator, or using pricing and contract management to manage the commercial aspects of their business. Engineering change control, we commonly see is a bunch of Excel forms being emailed around the company, leading to the manufacturing department often making to wrong revisions. And the APICS, now known as the Association for Supply Chain Management Principles, are often being done in Excel, manually, what have you. And as an APICS practitioner for over 30 years, it disturbs me that things like MRP and capacity planning and scheduling are left unutilized, or cycle counting and traceability. Similarly, we're seeing financial reporting being done in Excel in uncontrolled files, or quality management being done in manual means, maintenance and workflow, and customer relationship management. So what is very common and kind of still the state of the market with ERP is that it's implemented as an accounting system, and everybody else is still struggling to optimize their tools and productivity. And what we've identified is that there are four types of gaps. We gave you four sources, now there's four types, and we'll give you some tools and techniques on how to eliminate these. First off is what we call functionality gaps. The software just flat out doesn't do what we need it to do. It doesn't fit us. We've seen companies that get into mixing and blending and need formulation management, and their product only has discrete bills of material. And the list goes on, and I'm sure as a user you might have examples yourself. Ways to eliminate functionality gaps are listed here, and again, we'll be happy to provide this, but oftentimes upgrades will lead to new features that may close those gaps. If that isn't the case, then add-on modules. Maybe you don't own something that the software publisher offers. Sometimes getting partner products, or bolt-ons as they're often called. Workflow automation from big companies like ServiceNow, or smaller ones like Knowledge Sync can help streamline processes and knit things together that aren't well knitted together. If those fail, then customizing within the system's tool set is often a viable alternative. Our last two resorts are modifying the source code, and then certainly major surgery replacement is our last resort. Utilization gaps are gaps where the features exist, but they aren't being used. And again, back to that accounting-driven implementation, Maybe we're doing transaction processing, but we let operations and sales off the hook to continue to use their Excel spreadsheets or whatever they like to use because they have more control over it. Sometimes information sharing is not pursued as a business strategy. And very commonly what we find is that there's a lack of foundational knowledge to use these capabilities. Very common among our small and mid-sized manufacturing clients, we see degreed professionals with accounting and finance degrees in the accounting department, and folks who maybe don't have the same level of education and training through APICS or an operations management degree. And so they've never been presented with what infinite scheduling is versus finite scheduling and the differences between master scheduling and MRP. And so it is maybe just a case of foundational knowledge that needs to be transferred. So eliminating utilization gaps, sometimes it's just enlightenment. Periodically getting a little sales pitch from the vendor, illuminating what features are available. Conceptual education, often available through folks like Catalyst Connection, certification classes through professional societies, community colleges and universities. Education differs from training. Education is about knowledge. Training is about skill development. What buttons to push? Where do you set up these features in your software? So those are both, one feeds the other. We recommend that you reward as company an incentive to reward and incentivize completion of these things because they do make companies better. Treating these utilization improvements as miniature re-implementations. We're going to take the same process we did to implement it as we did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but we're now going to implement the maintenance module or the CRM module. And very much you want to adopt where there's a will, there's a way. Left to their own devices, people will often resist change and resort to Outlook and Excel and Microsoft Office. And so there has to be a carrot and a stick approach, if you will, to eliminate utilization gaps. Those are the two easiest to solve. And we would suggest to most companies, don't throw out your ERP system if all you're dealing with is fit gaps and utilization gaps. Structural gaps where you need multiple entities, multiple plant processing, multiple currency, multiple language, where your business has grown and expanded. Maybe you bought a small job shop system and you're now a $35 million, somewhat complex facility or company with a facility overseas. Those little systems you've probably outgrown. There are short-term workarounds, but they are short-term at best. Differences in costing methodologies, for example. And then technology gaps come forward when the software just didn't keep up. Perhaps the vendor didn't reinvest their monies into the product, and you're now left with older technology that's not viable in a cloud, internet-based modern world. Maybe it doesn't interact well with your office tools. It's inflexible, might even be slowing down. The problem with technology gaps, there's some stopgap solutions, such as porting to a modern database or using other reporting tools. But once you have a structural gap or a technology gap, it's time to start retirement planning for the system. Doesn't mean you're in a crisis mode, but it's usually time to start retirement planning for a year, 2, 3 down the road. And so this is where we've developed this 7-step roadmap to improve system utilization. First thing is to define goals and objectives in an ERP strategy. And oftentimes the word strategy, we get eyes glazing over, but we're talking about a 1-page strategy document, not a 3-ring binder full. And then the focus is on business processes and requirements, and then some measurements. And then once you've done some metrics and set your base case and benchmarks, then you can start the actual exercise of closing the gaps. So the first thing is, why are we here? Why would we spend time and effort on improving our use in an ERP system what are the intangible benefits or tangible benefits we might get from investing in these intangible assets. Our suggestion is to consider how might customers be better served, costs reduced, employee productivity increased. Think in those terms and come up with a set of goals and objectives. Not in terms of software requirements, but truly in terms of we want to increase our head count, or not our head count, we want to increase our revenue to head count perspective. We want to improve our turns, like that CEO I mentioned, from 3 to 5 or whatever those numbers are, but come up with some tangible goals. Second step is develop an IT strategy. And this, for what we've done is we've seeded one of our tools for our clients to just simply define what is their mode of operation, their international operations strategy today and going forward. What is their IT strategy? Not everyone has to be leading edge. There's nothing wrong with being mature and using mature and stable technology, even if it's not the sexiest available. A big discussion point is how important is fitment, meaning we're going to run a system plain vanilla versus a custom system that we want to be adaptable and modifiable to meet ever-changing customers' needs. And both can be appropriate depending on your business strategy. Same thing with self-sufficiency. There's nothing wrong with owning the software, running it on your servers and controlling the infrastructure. Yet there are plenty of companies where it's more appropriate to outsource that to a hosted environment or a cloud provider. And these are where you want to align your ERP strategy with your business strategy. Again, this is usually a 1 to 2 page document. We help our clients pull these together, but these are the characteristics and criteria that you want to consider. Are you a low price, low cost competitor? Then that's maybe what's going to lead us towards more of a plain vanilla type software implementation, versus if we're competing on product differentiation or service and responsiveness, we're going to need strength in some of these other types of features. So the last part of the strategy is develop this business case. Will improved system utilization enhance our growth better than our current system? Do our employees waste time looking for information? Can an improved enterprise system improve our employees' productivity? Can we increase our asset utilization by having better inventory visibility or better visibility into our maintenance costs? Third step is to design business processes. Most of our clients that we work with have some of this capability in-house. Typically it's done in the form of cross-functional process maps. Take your core business processes and maybe map them at a high level and maybe one level down, and then look for opportunities for improvement. Here we suggest highlighting and then endeavoring to eliminate non-value added activities. If there's things that are done multiple times, if it's filing paper, what have you, eliminate the non-value added, and then things that are value added or non-value added but necessary, those are candidates for automation. Non-value added but necessary might be some sort of contractual agreement with a customer to do a sampling inspection. It's not adding value to the product, but is required by your contract. So those are the 3 steps of the 7 that are somewhat of the homework, the preparatory exercises. But the actual improvement, the approach that we recommend starts with a gentleman named H. James Harrington. He wrote a book called Business Process Improvement. And he said that measurement is the first step that leads to control and eventually improvement. And if you can't measure something, you can't understand it. And if you can't understand it, you can't control it. And if you can't control it, you can't improve it. And we took that to heart when we when we set out our methodology on improving ERP utilization. And this is a snapshot from 2001. We've done many more projects since then, but I like to give that CEO credit who kind of spawned our idea. But he, in essence, he didn't know he was asking us, but he basically asked us, give me a utilization assessment of my ERP system like I get for my machinery. So we looked at several areas. We grouped kind of some into general questions, but in inventory and bills of material. And this was all the apex areas that they were struggling with related to their inventory challenges. And we identified requirements in each of those areas and came up with 137 statements that this is what you need to do to improve inside your ERP system, inside any ERP system, to do things the way you want to do them. We then audited the capabilities of their system and found that it could do 102 of those 137, giving it a fairly mediocre fit score of 74%. But what we found and so that's its capability or potential, if you will. What we found, however, in each of those areas, they weren't using the full cadre of capabilities. For example, in bill of material, they agreed that they were 17 features they need to use. Their system does 16 of them, but they were only using 8 of them. So depending on which you want to use for your numerator, it's somewhere between a 47 and a 50% level of utilization. The theoretical best case was 8 out of 16. But and so what we showed them was they were barely using half of the system meets half the system use barely meets half of what they would have in an ideal state. And it's been this scorecard that we've embedded into our methodology. Now you have it in front of you. We started with a detailed software requirements investigation that we did as part of a detailed gap fit assessment. But we suggest to all of our clients, if you're considering a replacement, go through requirements analysis. If you're considering an extension to other companies or plants, go through your requirements assessment. Or if you're considering an upgrade, go through a requirements assessment. What do we need and want it to do? These are the topics that we suggest that you look at for your ideal state. Notice these in red. These are often performed outside of ERP, but sometimes within ERP. These are often done in your customer relationship management software. Scheduling is often a bolt-on or a scheduling software tool. Asset maintenance might be in something outside of ERP, but be sure to consider them nonetheless. This is an example. I won't read through all of them, but this is an example from some of those topical areas of what the requirement is. And don't just come up with what the requirement, like we need to do sales forecasting with a seasonality model. Come up with the rationale, the reason. Well, in this case, this client needs seasonal forecasting because they sell to a construction market where, for 25% of their revenue, which is highly seasonal. So they have up and down demand throughout the course of a year. Once you've got your requirements defined, and typically we recommend weighting them high, medium, low, critical, nice to have, etc. Also go through your technology requirements. They're very important, especially if you're switching systems or upgrading. Note that the ones here in red are typically not changeable if you're seeking to keep the current system, but you just use it better. The user interface, the screens are what they are. The database is usually, and network operating system is typically prescribed by the software publisher. So there aren't a lot of opportunities to change. But if you're upgrading or if you are switching systems, you certainly want to specify that you prefer an Oracle database or what have you. Where you can get some benefit in the tech side that tends to cover the whole group of users are things like document management, reporting and analytics, workflow, and integration tools that might help you tie in other systems. So how do you go about the requirements building process? Certainly there's a do-it-yourself approach. There are online checklists. You know, everything's out on the internet today. For all I know, you could ask ChatGPT to provide you with one. Or you can just start with a blank sheet of paper and have people put down their wish lists. Consultant facilitators like my firm will bring some experience and a knowledge base and some proprietary tools as well to help you jumpstart this process. You certainly want to review your business processes that are supported by your current package, but you also want to look in other areas of any place that you did custom software or custom reports. What are you using Outlook or Gmail for? Or what are you using Excel spreadsheets and Access databases for? These are all opportunities to bring into your integrated system that are now being done in disparate systems. And we always say include the basics, but focus on what's unique about you. That's not often easy to know because many times people have worked in most or all of their career in one company, and that's where outside opinions can certainly be helpful. Once you've gone through your requirements, now you want to determine the fit and level of utilization of your current system. This is a case where you can you start off by defining if and how this current system supports each requirement. If it is supported, is it out of the box fully? Is it because you wrote a custom report, did a workflow, or made some configuration changes? These are sort of in level of difficulty how systems support current state requirements. If you don't know, that's a training opportunity. Document. We require this. We don't know if our current system offers it. Excellent opportunity to start building a training curriculum. Secondly, for anything that you know is both required, supported, then say, are we using it? Couple of approaches there, and this is very akin to an ISO audit, doing either internal audit or an external audit. Well, show me that you are using it. You say your system supports it, you require it, show me that you're using it. Yes or no. We've sometimes given a letter grade that shows yes, they're using it, but there's some issues associated with it. No right or wrong answer, but it's the 3 dimensions. How important is it? Does our current system offer it? And are we using it? From there, it's very easy to determine the software's fit. Assign numeric weights to high, medium, and low. Sum up the weights of all the requirements. That's your denominator. Give the vendor package full credit for a yes, that they support it. Partial credit for if it required customization, or no points if it's a no. And then sum up the points in the numerator, and then you divide one by the other, and you end up with a scorecard of the fit. Then you look at, are they being used? Get full credit for the weight if they're being used. Partial credit, they get partial scores for somewhat using it. And then you come up with sum those up, and now you have your percentage of utilization. And you end up with a scorecard that looks something like this. This is from a live client of ours right now in Dayton, Ohio. I won't tell you their name, of course, because their scorecard wasn't particularly attractive. The current version of their current system is nearly an 89% fit. Couple of scores below our minimum thresholds got highlighted. If they upgrade this column, they could get a 90.7% fit. So nearly 2 percentage increases in capabilities. But notice all red level of utilization. Every score below our threshold of 65%, which is kind of a D score. And in some areas, a big old 0 in multi-currency, project management, quality, asset management, service management, for an overall percent utilization of 20%. Now, admittedly, this is about as bad as we've ever seen, and hence for the reason for them asking for an outsider to help them. But in our particular case, we did not recommend that they switch systems, because their current system as of now looks to be a very good one, not perfect, but certainly capable of much more than what they're using it for. Our recommendations tend to go according to this rubric. If the software fit is less than 80%, then see if an upgrade would get you to more than 80%. But less than an 80% fit to needs at least warrants investigation of replacement to see if a potential replacement would give you something up into the 90% fit. If the software potential is greater than 80%, but the level of utilization is less than 70, then we say you need a re-engineering approach. And that's often going to require outside assistance, someone who can drive this home and get people to begin using the system more appropriately and fully. If your level of utilization is between 70 and 90%, then we say that you're doing pretty well and you're more of a candidate for continuous improvement. There's opportunities to improve, but you're self-sustaining and you've demonstrated an ability to handle these things yourself, and just seek out on an ongoing basis to raise that level of utilization from 70, to 90, which we think is world class. How do you go about doing those things? Well, before you embark on anything, one of the things you want to do is a cost benefit analysis. Here's a listing of the costs associated with doing an on-premise or hosted model. Here's the costs and their relative costs doing a software as a service model. Notice that when you buy software, you have high internal staff costs because the software vendor isn't managing those things for you. The reason we say this is we did one of these assessments for a client in Northwest Pennsylvania, and we found that while the system had plenty of capabilities for them, they didn't own many of the modules, and we ended up having to look elsewhere. Cost initiatives, couple of things to keep in mind. For every dollar you're going to spend on the outside with consulting services, training time with a software vendor, you should budget 5 to 10 times for what the internal costs are going to be. And don't forget the opportunity costs associated with when you focus on an internal ERP improvement initiative. It's going to pull time and money away from other capital projects and take time away from other initiatives. And you don't want to make it so that your folks are working 7 days a week trying to get these things done. So that's our cautionary tale. But cost elements also include the software, the hardware, and certainly some external time. And what we often see, and is hard to manage, and where we help our clients with some of the decision, is there's an inherent conflict between time to benefit and time required. The all-in approach reduces the time into a concentrated effort, but can cause some burnout and certainly create cash flow challenges. A phased approach minimizes the disruption, but it elongates that time to benefit. So you want to look at how important is it, how big is the potential benefit, and see what your software's recommendations are, and also ask them or a consulting firm like us for what have other companies done and what has been successful and not from their approach. A do-it-yourself approach is always, kind of the first deployment model. Consultant-driven, having it done to you instead of by you, is not something we recommend because it's often done in a manner that's not scalable or transferable. But a combination approach that depends a little bit on outside experts but keeps most of the work in your column seems to work best from a sustainability standpoint. The consultant-driven approach will bring some gains, but they often are lost when the consultants disappear. This is the change management approach that we walk our clients through. Notice we've got education at the front end and training on the latter end. Bring that concept and conceptual knowledge up front. Use that to simulate the business in a laboratory setting so that we can define our processes and procedures, develop any special reports or customizations, do a dress rehearsal or conference room pilot, and then train the masses on how you're going to use it. This works for implementing a new system, implementing modules or subsets of a system. It's a great approach to create sustainable change. Last advice, and this goes particularly towards anyone of a C-level in the audience, and that is be realistic about compensation. As you develop your people and put them through education and training, they're going to become more attractive, but they're also going to become more productive. And I always show this slide when we talk about these things, which one of these people is working harder, but which one of these people is being paid more. And so when this person operating the backhoe can do the work of 10, they probably do deserve to be paid a bit more. And so be cognizant of that dynamic when you go through with these changes. So utilization improvement takeaways. Monitor your fit and utilization just like any other asset. Publish those graphs. Make everyone own that their utilization needs to improve. And update that on an annual basis, biannual. Do it on years that you're not doing an ISO audit, something like that. Develop your work procedures and process maps to institutionalize the use of your ERP and CRM systems. Make it part and parcel of how you do business. Recognize that there are going to be internal and external organizational changes required, and a good benchmark is to invest as much money in education and training as you do in software. Software unused is called shelfware, and it doesn't do anyone any good other than the software vendor who sold it to you. The training and education is what will drive the business improvement. Unfortunately, there are cases that we come upon where our clients do need surgery. It's a last resort. We don't like to recommend, but there are cases where companies need new systems. Here's some examples of why. They've grown and expanded. They've spun off businesses. They're version locked because they've done heavy customizations. The software might be obsolete, no longer supported or viable. Maybe they've changed their business and they have new products, processes, services, facilities, etc. But they recognize that the new system will no longer scale to where, or their current system doesn't scale to their new business. In these cases, if they've been doing what we suggest you do in the first portion of this presentation, then you've already done steps 1 through 3 in our framework for selecting new systems, which also happens to be 7 steps. You already know your goals and objectives and your strategy and your requirements. So then it's just a matter of, in our case, clicking a few buttons, or doing, if you're going to do it manually, do a little bit of candidate research, get some budgetary numbers from the software publishers, investigate, evaluate, and select, and then begin implementing. We view software selection as a marriage, and because it's not like finding a corrugated supplier or a raw material supplier that you can switch. A software publisher, an ERP vendor, a CRM vendor is like a spouse. It's a long-term partnership that should be mutually beneficial. Switching costs are incredibly high, and there are many choices out there. So treat it like a courtship. You want to, the other reason to treat it for this is to avoid initial ongoing customization costs. Customization is a gift that keeps on giving from you to your software vendors. And customization should be avoided in most cases, particularly if you can get the software to do what you need it to do off the shelf without customizing it. A good courtship process also is educational for the employees and brings buy-in, and it prepares them for the rigors of an implementation. And also, we put in here the software vendor salespeople. There are many jokes about software salespeople, but the reality is they will say yes even when they don't know that their software can't do what you need it to do. So you want to be very careful and do your homework. How do you do your homework? Internet searches, websites, websites that provide top 10 ERP, those kind of things. More importantly, and better than that, talk to your customers, your suppliers. If you have any competitors that are remotely friendly, find out what they have done, their successes, their failures. Trade shows and trade magazines are a great source of information, as is the MEP network with folks like Catalyst Connection. My firm has helped at least 10 Catalyst Connection clients with this endeavor. And there are software evaluation databases out there. Ours just happens to be one of them. How do you learn about what software vendors can do? Well, You can build a requirements document your own and send it to them. This is a low cost way to do it. You don't have to pay anybody. The concerns or questions are, will the vendors understand your requirements and answer them appropriately? What incentive do they have to actually answer them completely and accurately? But what we would suggest here for you is, instead of sending software vendors a 3,000 line questionnaire on your requirements, pick out the 50, 100, maybe 200 that are the most critical deal breaker requirements and the module configuration that you want, and send that to them and say, if you can get over these high hurdles or high jump, then we'll let you try the low hurdles. The other option is to use an online database or engage a consulting firm. This is, if you're going to engage a consultant, you certainly want them to bring this along with some online research, but you want to ask yourself, are the time savings and quality worth it? You certainly want to understand your consulting firm's research process. How do they know what the various vendors can do and don't do, and how do they keep up with what's available on the market? And examine some samples from their prior engagements. Ask them for sample documents and deliverables that they've done on their other clients. Don't just ask for, don't just accept their word in their proposal, but get examples and what you can expect. Another suggestion I would say in terms of consultants and consulting firms, are they really independent, or are they wedded to a particular vendor or two? Do they take commissions? Do they spread the wealth? Have they worked with more than just the usual suspects that have brand name recognition, but have they worked with, for example, there's a small ERP company in Pittsburgh called Bazawi. Have they ever worked with the folks from Bazawi? Is their focus limited to just a few like Microsoft, Oracle, and Infor, the usual suspects? Are there any biases? I always tell our clients, our bias is we don't recommend vendors who have done a poor job for our clients. And how many similar projects have they led? Do they understand your industry and some of the nuances in your type of manufacturer? Here's an example scorecard that we provide our clients. How do the products, in this case, for a mythical client called General Tool, how do these 10 packages stack up on a percentage basis fit relative to these broad areas? Can they provide those kind of deliverables with highlights that show areas of big misfit to your needs? So once you've got the candidates identified, then you want to determine the total costs of ownership. Usually from the data, you can pick 3-4 finalists to really deeply investigate, and then send them a request for proposal, just getting total costs. And you want to make sure that you include all of those costs that we suggested before. If it's a hosted or on-premise model, you'll have these cost elements. If it's a SaaS model, you'll have these cost elements. Couple of observations. You need to send out RFPs to get formal proposals. Consultants like us, we can maybe give you ballparks, but they tend to be very relative, and the devil is in the details. We've seen some vendors cost double in scope just because of some options that were included. You want to force the vendors into a comparable scope and make sure that you're comparing apples to apples, as they say. We find that antagonistic negotiations lead to higher costs, not lower, because remember, this is a future spouse, and that software vendor may not want to be married to someone who drives them towards and is fighting over the last dollar or nickel. If you need to do more than 2 demonstrations, you're going to increase your costs. Don't make sure that you only invite them in for 2 demonstrations, and make sure that you get everything, all of your questions answered from a demo perspective out of those 2 interactions. Beyond that, they will become frustrated and start raising your price. Timing, if you can time it to an end of a fiscal year or quarter, you can save a few percentage points. We also find that the niche focus vendors that focus on a niche, maybe they just focus on the food industry or the medical industry, or if they have a strong brand name like Microsoft, they will have pricing power. Conclusion, the costs are very useful when picking your semifinalists, but ultimately when you get down to 2, you will find that cost ends up not even being a tiebreaker. So how do we choose a winner? Number of ways to go about this. I think we've got another 7 here, and any or all of them are appropriate. An overview demo helps you understand the user interface, the modules, and the flow, but not a lot of the nitty-gritty. These are very good to do. There's often ones out on YouTube that you can look at. Ones that the first demo that we orchestrate with our clients, we call them high jump demos or screening demos. And these help weed out the pretenders based on the really difficult items. The next one is what we call a day in the life demo, where we show detailed fit and flow. If they've made it through the high jump, then we want to see how well orchestrated is the flow of the process and processes in the software. Often a technology review is both a meeting and a demonstration to get the IT tools people to buy in and validate that the system will meet their needs, not just the needs of the end users. On occasion, we have had clients go through what we call a paid for proof of concept workshop, as opposed to demo, which might range from a half a day to a day and a half. This might be a week-long workshop where, and it's often paid for. It begins to be a consulting engagement with a software vendor that's a candidate. It's rare, but it has its merits and its place. Expert opinion, getting input from consultants, from firms like the Gartner Group, what have you, can certainly be a valid exercise to validate your decision. Customer testimonials and references, we mean other customers of the software vendor to help you validate your decision, as well as learn lessons. What did they do right and wrong? Choosing a winner, other forms of due diligence, we've got the customer's experience. We suggest visiting the vendors and your VAR, if you buy it through a value-added reseller, visit their headquarters, shake their hands, look around, make sure that they've got a culture that meshes with yours. Meet the leaders in their support department. That's who's going to hold your hand throughout the marriage. And interview the assigned consultants. I can't say this enough. Don't just accept any consultant that they assign to you. Let the software publisher know that you want to interview the ones that are assigned to you and throw them back if you don't think that they understand your business. So summary and conclusion, relative to package selection, align your software strategy with your business strategy, set and refine your goals and your requirements, compare them on paper, compare their costs on paper, then verify them through kind of your test drives with demos, reference checks, workshops, and customer visits. Negotiate your price at that point. If you've gone through all of these exercises, the vendor will be exhausted. They will have put in a lot of time with you, and you're now sitting in a very enviable negotiating point. And then implement and align it with your strategies and goals. Last slide on us. Meaden & Moore is headquartered in Cleveland, CPA and consulting firm. We have offices in Meadville as well as Pittsburgh. So we cover Western Pennsylvania as well as most, if not all, of Ohio. We were founded in 1919, and so over 100 years old, but have clearly not been doing ERP research for over 100 years. Our consulting, when it comes to enterprise software work, is exclusively with manufacturers, distributors, and industrial service providers. And we remain proud of the fact that we are independent. We don't sell anyone's software, nor are we wedded to anybody. So you can always be sure you'll get our independent advice. And with that, I'll ask if there are any questions. If not, I'll turn it back to Tom and Allison.
Great. Thank you, Scott. That was good information. I appreciate it. I think the one question that I wanted to share, or just to relay, I think that it's clear to folks whether they're, that an ERP probably oftentimes does more than what they are aware of, or, there are capabilities. I liked that you kind of talked about some of the aspects can be done internally by a company, but then obviously there are other aspects of the gap analysis and the review that can be done with an expert like yourselves, Mead and Moore. So is that where would you recommend someone start who's they're suspecting that they could make improvements, but they just aren't really sure what the next step is?
Great question. And it's really starts with, do you feel that you're getting your bang for your buck out of your systems? And if the answer is no, we aren't, or we don't know, that's a good opportunity to start. And then the question is, if you don't know, then that does tend to lead itself to an outsider, because you're admitting, hey, we don't know what this system can do. If you've been down, one of the companies that we recently talked with said to me, how can you help us if you don't know our software? And I said, well, tell me about your experience with people that do know your software. And he said, well, we've been through 3 different consulting firms that know our ERP system, which happens to be Visual. And I said, well, how did that work out for you? And he said, terribly. And I said, well, maybe that's because they're not independent. They're not going to tell you what their system can't do. They're not going to tell you that it's a bad fit for you. Maybe that's the answer, but they
Right.
aren't going to tell you that. And so there is
Yep.
that element to it. We've built a tool that we call the ERP Navigator, and we license it to clients who want to do it themselves, but have a framework, but don't want to pay to have third-party consultants and their exorbitant fees inside their building. So companies can use our framework, and that ends up being very cost effective. If they want us to help advise them and answer questions about, should I use infinite or finite scheduling, or should I use blanket purchase orders, or what are the benefits of some of these things? Should I use standard costing or average actual costing? That's where it turns into more of a consulting engagement. So you can begin either place. And honestly, I think a great place to start is with some of the advisors there at Catalyst Connection. They've seen us work with a number of clients, and I think in a variety of manners, some very much a guide on the side with limited engagement, and some with us out front helping pull them along, and both approaches can work.
Great. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I would encourage anyone who's listening to this to take a look. You could reach out to Catalyst Connection or any of the other AIM Hire Consortium partners. If you aren't sure which one would be most local to your region, you could just go right to the AIM Hire Consortium website. There's a contact us form. You just type in your basic information and what you're looking for. We'll get back out to you. But yeah, we will definitely be working with partners like Mead and Moore who can take you to that next level. And I also just want to point out that we do oftentimes have access to, or at least aware of, some grant funds or some other funding opportunities that might help offset some of the cost for the research effort, not necessarily even just purchasing a new ERP, but like you said, Scott, some of the work that Mead and Moore does, depending on what level it is and how it's all set up, there might be a way to have half of that cost covered by grants that are out there. So, yeah.
Excellent,
so just encourage people.
And if I could add 2 points to that, the software vendor has a role in this improvement. I don't want to leave anyone with the idea that a 3-legged stool is a good approach. But if you've worked with your software vendor and don't feel that you've gotten the results, it may be a situation where you need that sort of independent second advice. And I'm reminded of a man who's much smarter and wealthier than me. Warren Buffett frequently says, you never ask a barber if you need a haircut. And I think that's what comes to fruition. If you're frustrated with your ERP system, it may be that the barber gave you a bad haircut. So
that's a very good analogy. Well, thank you very much for your time, Scott.
You bet, Tom.
It was really good. I learned a lot myself, and I encourage everyone to follow up and talk to us. Even if you think you're in a good spot, we'd be glad to kind of walk through with you and see, if there's anything that might be done. And some of these fixes can be small but impactful. Is it right?
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. We there's two people up at a client of ours in St. Mary's, PA, who are much happier because they turned on the purchase requisition module at their company. It's a small win, but it probably took away a half hour of overtime that two people were putting in every day, double entering data. And those type of little gains go a lot towards making people happier in their jobs. So great point.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very good. All right,
All
well,
right.
thanks, and thanks everyone, for listening.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.